Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today I'm interviewing a fabulous woman called Sharon Hess. Sharon, where is it you're from?
Well, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and now I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
Excellent. Well, a very warm welcome to you, Sharon, from currently today, Phoenix in Arizona.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Lyn.
What I'd like to do is introduce the title of what this episode is going to be around. So Sharon came up with a brilliant title, I think. And it's going to be around, if you're looking for love, do this, not that. So Sharon, if you're looking for love, do this, not that. What is the this, not that?
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'll just share with your audience. Lyn and I were having a conversation and we were talking about, what to talk about. And that just popped in. Okay. So basically, in a nutshell, and of course, there's a lot more to it, but the do this is be yourself and not that try to fit into somebody else's mold. Isn't
that the truth? So how does somebody start that process then? How do you sort of say, well, when you're thinking about being your authentic self, what does that look like and how do you explain that to people?
Okay, so it's kind of interesting. Years back, when I started my spiritual path, my journey began with A Course in Miracles. And the thing I love about that spiritual path is it's really all about knowing yourself and self-love and knowing how to connect to your divine self. And the beautiful thing is when you learn how to connect to your divine self, your spirituality is all about your authenticity, right? Then that kind of like flows over into everything and everywhere in your life. Now, working with clients over the years, what I've discovered is we actually block ourselves from who we are on a soul level and who we really truly came here to be and who we want to be. We will block that one of three ways: health, wealth, or relationships. And sometimes we have a mixture of those three. But I think the biggest way we do that is with relationships, because relationships really, really teach us about ourselves, right? As well as other people. But it shows us what it is that we truly desire. And it also gives us contrast where we learn what we don't really want. But we have this ego separate, I just call it crazy part of ourselves that actually, instead of looking at something as contrast, meaning, okay, so I experienced that and I saw that that's not what I want. We think, oh, well, I should want that. So I'm going to try to make myself be that, or I'm going to try to make myself want that. And that, creates so much unhappiness in this world.
Can you give us an example, Sharon?
Okay, so let's say that you want me to go into dating, marriage, which direction you think I should go here?
Yeah.
Dating, maybe you think most of your clients are interested in
probably
dating and like the male-female dance, as it were, because it is a dance, although men are different. We think different. Women is women. We don't think that at first. When I was young, I just always treated a guy like I treated a woman. I didn't realize there are, stark differences in the way that we process things, right?
Yes.
So let's say that you're that a guy asks you out on a date and you're obviously attracted to the guy. That's why you say yes and you go out on the date with him. But sometime, let's say you're having dinner, and sometime during the dinner, he says something that's kind of like a red flag in a sense that, let's say he says, oh, my last girlfriend had a teenager, and he was just horrible, and I just really, I really didn't like being around him. So deep in your heart and soul, the way that makes you feel is, ew, this guy really, that was kind of icky the way he said that. But then you don't want to be alone, and you want to have somebody in your life so bad, you kind of overlook that. All right. So later on down the line, more things start coming out that are the same. I want to say issue, because people are who they are, and the guy has a right to be who he is, but it just doesn't fit with you, and it just doesn't fit with what brings you joy and happiness and peace and love and all of that in your life. So you start making excuses like, okay, well, maybe the woman's son really was a little twit. Maybe he was horrible, and maybe the guy's just saying something that's true, but you don't really know. You have to go, you really have to, Lynn, you have to go with your gut feeling and how it makes you feel, right? Mm-hmm. Because our emotions are like energy in motion. And the reason that we're attracted to people or not attracted, or things feel good to us or things don't, is because they don't fit with who we are and who we are on an energetic level. Does that explain it better for you?
It does explain it better. And, I think we can all relate to that, sort of not really listening to those gut instinct red flags when, like you say, we're so desperate to have something, whether that person is right for us or not in terms of a relationship, that we ignore those signals that are waving those red flags. And
exactly.
Like
and
said,
that doesn't mean that we can't compromise, right?
No.
It doesn't mean that we can't step back and look at ourselves and go, well, is that really important to me? Am I being too picky? Right. Because sometimes, listen, I've been married 47 years, mm-hmm. and, there was a lot of compromise early on in our relationship. Anyone who's been married for a number of years knows that a marriage and a relationship takes some compromises. But what you have to pay attention to is it really that important? And it may really be that important to you, but the most important thing for you to do, okay, and this is one of those do this, not that, is to be honest with yourself, right? Because sometimes we will not even allow ourselves to be honest enough with ourselves to look at, is that something that I am willing to compromise on? Is that a core belief that I can change? Is that because of a belief that somebody else gave me? Or is it a belief that is really, really important to me? Because what I teach my clients is a belief. It doesn't matter if belief is true or not. If you believe it, it's true for you.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be true, right, or real. Does it serve you or doesn't it?
Right. Exactly. So, you might have a belief in your belief system. I've changed beliefs, I can't even tell you how many times in my life. But, they serve you in the moment, but moving forward, it may not serve you. But you really need to pay attention. The reason I was saying pay attention to the not that is if it is important to you, don't compromise it because you're not ready to. Or it's really something that is, trying to think how to say this. It's like it's really, really a part of your makeup that's not going to change. Right? Because we all want to be better and we all want to change for the better, but we want a partner that helps us do that. We want a relationship, and relationships aren't just with men. They can be with your boss, they can be with your best friend. I've had friends in my life that just came to me that, we were friends for a while, but then we just kind of, drifted apart because we had served what that relationship was there to teach us. Doesn't mean it was wrong. It doesn't mean it was bad, right? We just drifted apart. And that happens in all relationships.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the terminology, when it comes to relationships. Some are for a reason, some are for a season, and some are for a lifetime.
Exactly. And, you get to choose. So
Yes.
I'm laughing, but, it's like we think, oh, I have to make this work. Well, yeah, maybe you do, maybe you don't,
Yeah.
If you think I posted this today because it popped in my head this morning. I thought, oh, that's really profound. It's if you think you don't have the choice, you're wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Plain and simple. Isn't that great?
It is right. Definitely. Yeah.
We always have a choice. Nobody controls the real estate between your ears except yourself.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, 100% believe that. So I just, around the theme of relationships in general, know that, also that some relationships, you don't necessarily need to be in touch, such as with friends. I've got some of them. I can just pick that friendship up again 5 years later, and we can pick up where we left off without necessarily needing to be in touch with each other all the time.
Absolutely. Boy, isn't that the truth? I mean, I had someone, you popped in my head when you said that. I haven't talked to them in 10 years, but I could call them today and it would be like we talked yesterday. So yeah, absolutely. So here's something I thought about, though. I wanted to share with your audience, and I remember this was the beginning of an article that I wrote, is that I had a friend when I was young, and she was marrying this guy, and there were things about him that she really didn't, like or care for. And I said, well, why are you marrying him? And she said, well, because I can change him. It's like the only person you can change is yourself, right? But when Absolutely. You're young, you think you can change somebody else, which, you can give other people suggestions, or you can try and help guide them or whatever. But they have to make the choice to change, right?
Absolutely.
So, she was complaining about stuff he didn't do, and but he'll change once we're married. Well, getting married and having a signed piece of paper does not mean that the person's going to change, right? So I'll take this full circle all the way back to what we were talking about in the beginning about when you go out with someone and you see these red flags. It's a lot of times we will settle for less than we want and deserve, just like the guy on the date. Don't want to be alone, so I'll put up with his, him being not the person I want him to be. So sometimes we will settle because we think that that's all we will ever get. Now, here's the thing with the universe, okay? You have to have room for that person to come in, and you're not going to have the room for the right person for you to come in if you have it filled up with the wrong people.
I agree.
We only have so much bandwidth, as it were. We only have so many hours in a day. And if you're using it up already, right, you have to make room for the other things that you want. So that certainly plays a part in relationships and in love, But I think, what do I want to call it? Human love, earthly love. I don't know if you have a term for it or not, but basically, when we get into, I say male, female, but it could be female, female, male, male. Whatever you're into, that's fine. I don't judge, and we shouldn't judge anyone by any means. But those kind of love relationships are so far away from unconditional love that we really seek, right?
Yes.
That's why we're so challenged in them, I think.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, what you were saying about, the woman that you knew who, even though she could see those red flags in the guy she was going to marry, she still married him thinking that, she could change him. And I think that's a common thing that women do. They always think that they can change men, but like you said, 100%, it's down to you to change yourself, and on the back of you changing yourself, then you might inspire him to change. But don't go into a relationship thinking you can change or fix him, because that's likely to cause distance and disconnect, if anything.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's like a marriage is a partnership, like any partnership. And, you will have to go through negotiations and compromises. But it's not going to change the person. It's just not. We are who we are, and we are who we are for a reason. It's like what I do is I look at souls in the Akashic record. I look at someone's, like soul history and that type of thing. And we all have like a core, I don't know, it's called foundation. When we were first created, when our soul was first created, we had this foundation, and that foundation doesn't change. Right? The fact that we're still connected to God or universe or whatever you call it, creator, that which created all that is, we're still connected to that, but we don't think we are. So we look for all kinds of ways to fill that void. And I think the biggest way we do it is with other people.
Definitely. And I'm not saying as well, within that you can't, I suppose, have the relationship you want if a partner has got a trait or a habit that you don't particularly like, because there are ways that you can communicate and inspire a person to change without having it in mind, well, I'll just fix him, for example.
Right, well, exactly. And also it may be something that you need to not be so picky about.
Yeah.
Right? And you need to really, this is something I've really, really learned working with people, is a lot of the stuff that we're picky about is because somebody else told us we were supposed to be. It's like a parent, a sibling, a teacher, whatever. Somebody else said it and we thought, oh, well, that's a good idea. I'll make that part of my rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And I call it, when people should all over you, you should do this, you should do that,
Exactly.
You should do the other. Don't allow people to should all over you.
Exactly. Stop shitting on yourselves.
Yes, exactly, as well. Because we as well do that, should all over ourselves within that. Yeah.
So there again, it's like, so we think a lot of times that other people should fit to change into our agenda, and we're not the one, and we're not willing to compromise. So there's, it's a balance. It's a beautiful balance. And, my belief, okay, and I say it's a belief because it's something that could be changed, right? If it's eternal, it's not just the belief, it's wisdom. But, my belief is that people come into our awareness, our arena, into our experiences in life to help us grow and expand, not just on a soul level, but here in, our beautiful experience that we're having here on earth. So I think other people can really help us grow and expand in so many different ways if we allow it.
Most definitely. And that doesn't just mean, potential romantic partners. I think all relationships that you have with anybody, whether that's in the workplace, friendships, even our family relationships, are all designed to help us grow and progress.
Right. Exactly. So it's like, I like to think of it as the universe being just one big giant tapestry, and that each of us are a thread within this tapestry. To me, that's a beautiful way to look at how we are all connected in some way. But along the way, I also learned that the tapestry, the picture doesn't always stay the same.
No.
Sometimes it changes. Right?
Well, definitely. It's a bit like a movie screen. The screen never changes, but, the actual movies and characters change on it.
Exactly. So there you go. That's a perfect example. We project things outside of ourselves because we can't see what's inside of us. And so relationships are a beautiful, wonderful way for us to see what's going on within ourselves by what we're drawing to ourselves, right? If you're drawing, loving, kind people to you, that means that you're, kind of really balanced in the loving kindness space. So, and if you're drawing a lot of, nasty, unpleasant, negative, complaining people, then you need to just take a little step back. Don't ever feel guilty. Don't ever feel bad about yourself or negative about yourself, but just step back and say, okay, what is this trying to show me that I'm ready to heal? What is this trying to show me that I'm ready to let go of, or that I'm ready to embrace fully?
Okay, so would you say that's, I suppose, If you feel like you've made a poor judgment about somebody you've recently had a relationship, or may have even had a long-term relationship, but then they've let you down, what would you take that to mean in terms of what you'd say to yourself around that relationship, around that, there's a sudden now distrust around this person?
You mean someone that you've already had a relationship with?
Yeah, whether that's a friendship, an association, or whether it's a romantic relationship.
It could be, there's two sides to every coin. So we really have to look at both sides. Actually, we want to, instead of looking at the two sides of the coin, we always want to look at it from the edge so we see both sides at the same time, right? But one side would be that it has served its purpose, and so it's time to move on, and it's becoming uncomfortable because it is time to move on, right? But we're trying to fit that round peg into that square hole when we're supposed to lay the peg down and find the square peg, right? So that could be one thing. So, or it could be that there's something in you that that has come to a point within the relationship that you need to stop and look at what it is that you yourself are doing that's creating the dysfunction. So it could be one or the other. And that's why I say, everything in life is about balance, right?
Yes.
So if you look at it from the two sides, when you do that step back, it's like, am I just trying to push through something that I should let go of? Or am I not looking at something that it's time for me to change within myself?
That's great advice. Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay.
So what would be your tips for preparing yourself for attracting the one then, Sharon?
Be yourself. Know as much about yourself as you can, and always go with your gut instinct. Always go with your feelings. I love years and years and years ago, I heard the saying, the longest and hardest journey you will ever take in your life is from your head to your heart.
Yeah, actually, I love that. Yeah, I've not actually heard
Isn't that
it
great?
Recently, but yeah, that's a great reminder for me to remember that phrase, because that's great.
Exactly. So, go into your heart space and, whatever it is you believe in, most of us believe in something that created everything that there is, whatever it is for you, universe, higher power, higher self, could be God, Allah, whatever it is for you, I don't know. But whatever it is that you believe in that created you and everything around, go within your heart space and connect with that, right? Because when you do that, you just can't get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And when you always come from love, and you can't do that unless you have self-love, right?
Yeah.
So if you always do it from love, you can't get it wrong.
What are your, I've had loads of people sort of reinforce the message, around self-love. I'd just like to know your view, Sharon, on what would be your first steps, to advise somebody to start that process, because for some people it can be quite difficult, can't it?
Right. Well, it depends on, it's like I think I started my spiritual journey late. I was 40. Okay. It was kind of like the universe put it in front of me, and I had the opportunity at that point in time to accept it or not, because that's what our free will is all about. But I think working on self-love is learning to, first of all, how do I understand myself? How do I stop? I was going to say take the blinders off, but how do I stop pretending that I'm someone that I'm not? It's like we spend so much of our life being who we aren't, rather than who we are. And one of the biggest tips I can give anybody that I learned along the way is that stop trying to overcome your weaknesses. Stop trying to fix, quote unquote, learn the skills that you don't have. Focus on what is good and right and wonderful and just comes easily to you, because that's who you really are.
Definitely. You can't be all things to everybody. Like you said, just play to your strengths and know that that's who you're meant to be. And you're so right when you say most of us go through our life, and not being who we are. In other words, we're wearing a suit of armor that, nobody can crack and really see our heart is open, or we're wearing a mask, being a persona of who we're not.
Right. So, you have to find what works for you. There's so many different ways to work on yourself, self-help, self-love. Like I said, for me, the first one I found was A Course in Miracles. But of course, I've done a ton of spiritual study, and which I continue to, right? But it's because it's like peeling away the layers of an onion, peeling away those to really get to the heart and the core. But again, it will always come back to how you feel and whether or not you're feeling it within that heart space.
Yeah, most definitely. I love, as I said, what you said previously around the longest journey being from your mind to your heart.
Exactly, because we can think ourselves out into oblivion, and that was one of my things in life. Was I used to always overthink things. I'm laughing because I had a boss, and he'd come in and he knew me well enough. He'd go, "Okay, Sharon, just give me the net," because he knew I wanted to go into my big old long story, right? And the reason we want to go into our big old long stories and explanations is because we want to be right. And it comes from A Course in Miracles. A lot of people quote the saying, but that's where it comes from. But would you rather be right or happy?
Yes. Yeah.
And but we want to be right. We don't care about it. We will negate that happiness because we're adamant about being right. And I always laugh. I say, sometimes I know that I do want to be right, but I know that the price that I'm going to pay for that is I'm going to have to give up my peace. And when I give up my peace, I give up my happiness.
Definitely. And isn't that the truth when it comes to intimate relationships? Because sometimes, especially as women, we can be act quite superior to our men and want to be right. But, like you said, is it better to be right and lose the intimacy and connection, or is it better to be happy and maintain it?
Well, it could be, would you rather be right or anything?
Yes.
Would you rather be right or happy? Would you rather be right or rich? Would you rather be right or married? Would you rather be right? You know what I mean? So it's like we want to be right so bad. And I realized this years ago also. When you've been on Earth long enough, you learn stuff, and you just get it on a deeper level the further you go.
Yes.
But in my family would argue. It took me a while to get this, but nobody was arguing, really, if you think about this, to be right. It was because the reason we want to be right is because we don't want to be wrong. Okay. So if you will give yourself permission, and I tell people this all the time, when I became successful in life, I gave myself permission to be wrong, number one. And the second thing I did was I gave myself permission to not know. I don't know everything. I can be wrong, so what?
Yeah. And it's okay to make mistakes and don't beat yourself up about it. We all do it. We all make mistakes, right. Even if, like you say, we've been on this journey donkey's years, as we both have. There are times where you catch yourself making a mistake or falling into that next test and thinking, yeah, I just failed that one. Right.
And well, the trick is, what do you do about it? Like, there's a gift within every experience, and this is what I teach my clients is there's really no right or wrong anyway. It's all a matter of perception. So you have to look for the gift within. And if you can look for the gift within, then you don't judge yourself as right or wrong.
That's true. There's always a blessing on the back of every stressing is I think, a good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The's always a silver lining. It doesn't necessarily feel like it if you're feeling really challenged or, really under the weather or heartbroken or whatever you might be at the moment. But, if you are going through some negative emotions, just know they're temporary. You will come through the other side and you'll be a lot wiser and stronger for the experience.
Exactly. Don't let it define you. I laugh because, it's like I have a client recently. She said She said, well, you're happy all the time. I said, no, I'm not. You just don't see me when I'm not, because I just allow myself to move through it. You have to let it move through you, right?
Definitely.
And what happens, Lyn, and this is what I tell my, it's the old saying, and I love this because it'll become my mantra for the day if I'm having a really crappy time. This too shall pass. There is nothing in your life that you've been through stuff already, right? And you've gone through it, you've lived through it, and you're still here. So you're going to go through stuff and you're going to still be here. So just let it move through you. Don't let it define you, and just keep telling yourself this too shall pass, because it will.
Definitely. And I think there's a difference between pain and suffering, because, if you do have a challenge, it can be a short-term pain, but it can actually inspire you to take action and progress. The suffering only happens if you allow it to hang around, that pain to define you, like you said.
Right. And back to the whole thing about learning yourself and learning self-love. When you're in pain like that and you're struggling and you're suffering, say, okay, you are the creator of your own experience. And I know people don't like to hear that, because then they, no. But if you will own that and you will take responsibility, not to the point of being your own perpetrator, right? But if you will take the responsibility that when you're feeling the pain and the suffering and the struggle, that you'll stop and you'll say, what am I trying to learn here? What am I trying to show myself? What is it I am ready to release? Because I have found that energetically, when we're holding on to something that we should be releasing, that's what causes most of the struggle.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you can't do it yourself, and most of the time, if you're down in the rabbit hole, right, you can't pull yourself back out, then reach out, hire somebody to help you, call a friend, do whatever you need to do to reconnect to whatever it is you believe in, right? So find a way back to your heart space. Because if you're in pain and suffering, I will guarantee you are so far away from your heart space that, you might need to take 4 or 5 trains to get back, right? So do what you need to do to find your way back, and just make that your focus. I never thought about this before, but that would be a wonderful thing when you're in pain, to tell yourself this too may pass, but also say, okay, my focus, now my intention is going to find my way back to my heart space.
Definitely. It's about thinking about some really powerful, empowering questions to ask yourself when you're in that space, isn't it? What am I meant to know? What am I meant to learn? How can I reconnect, to my heart space to help me move past or through this in a way that's going to, leave me feeling a whole lot better and happier about where I'm heading.
Exactly. Yeah, because we've all been there. We've all, when I was facilitating a class, and specifically in A Course in Miracles, I started getting abused women, and I sat there and I thought, okay, this is kind of weird, because, my husband is just like the most wonderful man. He would never harm a woman. And I realized soon, shortly thereafter, it was because I could help them because I was holding that space for them, that I wasn't where they were. But I'll never forget, one day I was sitting there and I thought, people who are on a spiritual path always have this thing about forgiveness. And yes, it's true. We do. Forgiveness is the key to healing. Okay. But so women would have these men abusing them, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it was. And they would go, but I have to forgive him. So one day I was sitting there, I said, okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. If someone is abusing you on anywhere, any way, shape, or form, on some level, not a conscious level, because if you're consciously aware of it, you don't do it, right? But on some level, they are feeling guilty. Okay, so a man is really, for whatever reasons, he had a terrible childhood, so he hits the woman. And of course, then he feels, the cycle of abuse. Anyway,
yes.
So, but on some level, the abuser feels guilty on a spiritual level, not here in the conscious level, right?
Yeah.
So if you as the person allowing it, what you're doing by allowing it is giving them the gift of guilt, how are you helping them? Right? So that's the whole thing about we're not supposed to be doormats.
No.
Right. And when you get into that self-love, I love this, always goes back to self-love, right? So when you get into that space of self-love, you would never let anybody do that. From an ugly place. You can hold somebody accountable for their actions from a very loving space. It's just you are so confident. Your confidence, right, comes from your authenticity. So you are so confident, you just don't allow it.
Exactly. You automatically have those boundaries in place. And like you said, you're coming from a place of love, not fear. I think it's when we start living in a place of fear and have those beliefs around, and maybe not consciously, that I'm not deserving of anything better, or I'm not worth anything better. And that all comes from a place of fear. And so that's what will show up in your life, and you'll attract a partner that will reinforce those things.
Right. So you better love yourself. Listen, I say this too, is that, and this was before I even did any spiritual studies, right? But the only person you have to live with guaranteed your entire life is who? Yourself. Yeah. So you better love yourself, because you're going to be with you from the day you're born until the day you die. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel, though, in the world today, Sharon, that there is a shift towards, people becoming more and more aware of the personal development path, and there's more of a shift now towards love and peace than ever before?
It's one of the good things that technology has done for us.
Yes.
Right? Because it's a global economy, but it's also, like a smaller neighborhood. So therefore, like years ago, you had to, physically just happen to run into somebody and them just happen to mention it. Now people can search all over the internet. And so there's so many, this is the best way to say it. There's so many more opportunities for universal love to plant those seeds. Mm. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I think there's so many, what really, really excites me is, I have a lot of millennials that are coming my way. And I love that, because when I was that age, I was busy, doing what I thought I was supposed to do in life. Let me have a kid, let me be super mom, let me be super wife, super mom, all of that. And nowadays I find that the younger folks, they're searching with a more hunger, right? Mm. They're hungrier to find the answer to that wholeness, to feeling whole and to feeling complete. And the way you do that is by learning about yourself and learning about the love of the universe and, what it is that makes the world go round.
Absolutely. And I'm excited, to see where the next few decades take this shift, more towards this conscious way of living and as aspiring to be, more in touch with our heart and living, continuously from that place of love, not fear.
Exactly.
So exciting times ahead, Sharon.
Absolutely. I'm glad I got to see it and be a little part of it.
Me too. Right, on that note, as we're coming up to the end in terms of time available, Sharon, I'd love for you to just give our listeners some contact information. I'll make sure your bio and the contact information is put in our show notes, but for the benefit of anybody listening right now, would you be able to give us one or two points of contact for yourself if people are interested in learning more about what you do?
Yes. Okay. So my website is SharonHess.com. Took me a long time to come up with that name. So it's SharonHess, and that's S as in Sam.com. That's my website. I also have a YouTube channel, and it's Sharon Hess Videos. It's youtube.com/Sharon Hess Videos. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and most of the like Facebook and LinkedIn, it's Sharon K. My middle initial K as in key. Hess. So facebook.com/Sharon K. Hess.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. It's been a really, really, really interesting discussion. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I have too as well, Lynn. I thank you so much. And to anybody who's listening, I just would say if you're here and you're listening to this, it's because you're ready to hear it. So do what you need to do to tap into and find that self-love.
Most certainly. It's a really key message. I think that has been, a consistent thread, no matter whether that's been from myself delivering stuff in solo episodes or whether I've been, on an episode where I've been in discussion with my guests. It's a really constant, consistent theme. So hopefully with that being consistently reinforced, I'm hoping people are starting to think, you know what, there's something in this self-love thing.
Exactly.
All right. On that note, I'm going to wish all my audience and listeners a very, very, very great day. And remember, true love starts with opening your hearts. Goodbye for now. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.